Hey, what's going on everybody? It's ETAPRIME back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the all-new RG503 from AMBERNOC. I've actually been looking forward to getting my hands on this unit, mainly because of the screen and Wi-Fi. Now, it's definitely meant to be a retro console, but with 5 GHz Wi-Fi built in and an OLED display, this might make a great little Steam streaming device. And we'll definitely test that out in this video. So like I mentioned, this does have an OLED display. It's actually the same display that came in the first PS Vita, so we should have a really nice screen here. As you can see, we've got our shoulder buttons, our trigger buttons, dual analog sticks, we've got a D-pad, A, B, X, Y, start, select. It is charged over USB Type-C, and inside of the box we're going to get our instruction manual. We've also got our USB Type-C charging and sync cable, and a glass screen protector. Taking a look around the unit, down here we have dual stereo speakers, 2 micro SD card slots, we've got a reset button and a function button. Right out of the box with the stock firmware, in order to exit a game back in the emulation station, you do have to press function and start, but this can be remapped. It is a bit cumbersome when it's set up like that. Usually I just remap mine to start and select. Over here on the left hand side we have our power button, on the right hand side we have our volume rocker. And up top, we've got 2 USB Type-C ports, a 3.5mm audio jack, and mini HDMI out. When it comes to the specs of the RG503, for the CPU it's using the RK3566. We've seen this in a lot of Android boxes. We've got 4 cores up to 1.8 GHz, and these are Cortex A55 cores. The GPU is a Mali G52. We've only got 1 GB of RAM in here, which is totally fine for retro gaming and the Linux or Batocera operating system that's pre-installed. But with the RK3566, there is really great Android support, and 1 GB just really isn't going to cut it if we ever had an Android operating system for this unit. I really wish they would have added at least 1 more gig of RAM, bringing it up to 2. It's got a 3500 mAh battery, and they're claiming 6+ hours of gameplay out of this unit. It does have 5 GHz Wi-Fi and Bluetooth 4.2, and when it comes to the screen, it's a 4.95-inch OLED at 960 by 533. It's the same screen that was used in the original PS Vita before they swapped over to IPS. I'm a huge fan of that screen, but when it comes to retro gaming, I really wish this was a 4:3 aspect ratio screen. It's 16:9, so while playing our favorite retro games in a 4:3 aspect ratio, the way they were meant to be played, we will have some black bars on the side, or you can install some bezels. It's really up to you, but going into this, I really do wish it was a 4:3 aspect ratio unit. Okay, so the very first thing you're going to notice once you boot this up is the screen. I mean, it definitely looks beautiful. This is the main claim to fame when it comes to this little handheld here, and it definitely does a great job for what we have here. Awesome brightness, great viewing angles, and the colors definitely pop on this OLED display. Now, most of this stuff right out of the box is going to be set to 16:9, so once you start up a game from like Genesis or Game Gear, you'll notice it looks a little stretched out, but from the game settings, we can set this back to 4:3. That way, all of our retro games that were meant to be played at that aspect ratio go to that aspect ratio. Systems like PSP that took advantage of a 16:9 screen will be running at 16:9. It's using a standalone emulator, and it does look really good on this display. But now I want to get into some performance and just see what this thing can and can't do. We're going to start off light here with Sega Genesis, otherwise known as Mega Drive in other parts of the world. We've got Gunstar Heroes, and when it comes to the lower end stuff, Neo Geo, Super Nintendo, SNES, Game Boy Color, and obviously Sega Genesis, we have more than enough power to run these at full speed. Even with some nice shaders on, we can run these at 60 FPS. You're going to have a great time with these systems, but there's already a lot of handhelds on the market that can run these lower end emulators at full speed. Next up, we've got Game Boy Advance, and for the hardware we have, I didn't expect we'd run into any issues. I do love the speakers on this. They get nice and loud, super clear, and these games look great on this OLED display. Really wish it was a 4:3 OLED right out of the box. We could add bezels down the road if you want to fill in those black lines on the side, but you can get used to playing a game like this, or you can stretch it out if you want to. Next up, we've got PlayStation 1, and I do have the high resolution scaler going inside of RetroArch with this one. Colin McRae Rally 2.0, still one of my favorite rally games, and the RG305 can definitely handle PlayStation 1 really well. I don't suspect you're going to run into any games that don't perform well on this hardware. So it obviously has the lower end stuff covered really well, but what about something a little harder to run like Dreamcast? Here we are with Marvel vs. Capcom 2. I'm using RetroArch with the Flycast core. FPS is up in the top right hand corner. It's getting really close to 60. I'd say that this is definitely playable, still feels really good, but unfortunately it's not going to run every Dreamcast game this well. I went through and I tested a couple like Crazy Taxi 2, that one's in the mid-40s, and when it comes to the Flycast core, we can also do Naomi and Atomic Wave, getting really the same performance. Low 50s, mid-40s with most of the stuff, and something like Sonic Adventure 2, again, still in the mid-40s. I mean, it feels pretty decent. We do get some slowdowns and audio stutters every once in a while, but you know, coming out with a new handheld like this, it would be really nice to see that frame counter pegged out at 60 with Dreamcast on the RG503. And finally here, we've got some PSP using the standalone version of PPSSPP. We're at 2x resolution with Tekken Dark Resurrection, and it's running at full speed. Feels really good, and looks absolutely amazing on this OLED display. Tekken Dark Resurrection is one of those easier PSP games to emulate. I've had really good luck on low-end hardware with this, even with an upscale, and we're at 2x here. It's using the OpenGL backend, but this doesn't mean that it's going to run every PSP game at full speed. Because when we move up to Tekken 6, which is a bit harder to emulate than Dark Resurrection, we're not quite at 60 at 2x. We can take this down to 1x and play this game at 60, or we could turn frame skip on, and in turn it would run this game at 30 FPS. And for the harder to emulate PSP games like Chains of Olympus, that's probably what you're going to have to do on this hardware. You will have to enable frame skip, and even then I'm not sure if that game's going to do 2x with frame skip at 30. The next thing I wanted to take a look at was something I was really excited about for this device, and that's game streaming using Moonlight. So I've got this connected to my own PC in my house. This is my gaming PC. The PC itself is connected over Ethernet for a better connection. Obviously, the handheld here is on Wi-Fi. We're using a 5 GHz network. I can launch it directly into Steam. We can go to Big Picture or regular Steam. It's really up to you. Or we can launch individual games, like God of War. So I've got this running on my main PC. We're at high settings, 1080p. It looks really, really good on this display. The buttons were already mapped here. There was nothing I had to do from within the settings in the game itself or in Steam so far, but I really haven't gotten to big picture mode. I've just kind of been launching individual games, and it's worked out really well. I can't get over how good it looks on this display, and I've got a really decent router in the house, and having your main PC that you're streaming from connected on a wired connection definitely makes a big difference. That way we've only got one working on Wi-Fi, which is the handheld itself. I could play through this no problem at all. I wanted to test at least one more, and here we have Forza Horizon 5. With the layout of the triggers, it's a little hard to get to, so I would like to go into the settings and change this over. That way I can get to the gas and brake a little easier, but as you can see, I mean, it is fully functional. Streaming this from my PC at ultra quality looks really, really good. So when it comes to the RG305, there's a lot to like about it, and there's also a lot to dislike. And really, when it comes to the dislike, it's more about the performance in retro gaming, the higher end stuff. The lower end stuff's going to work just fine, as you saw in this video, but I wouldn't recommend running out and buying this specifically for PSP or Dreamcast. Of course, with some custom firmware, we might get a little boost in performance, but I don't see this ever running every PSP game at full speed. The chip they're using here, the RK3566, is kind of on par with the performance of the S905X3. It's definitely a lot more efficient, and battery life on this is really great. I can get 5.5 hours out of this unit playing it with the brightness all the way up. The speakers they used here sound really good. They get loud, nice and clear, so I love the sound system. And I'd say the main selling point here is that OLED display. It looks and performs absolutely amazingly, and I suspect we'll see more handhelds with these OLEDs in the future. But I do wish performance on the CPU was a bit better for Dreamcast and PSP. That would have made all the difference in the world. The price on this is around $135. It's really up to you. I mean, if you're interested in picking something like this up for game streaming and older retro games, then it might be a good option. But just know, going into it, you're not going to get the best PSP and Dreamcast performance out of this device. I will have at least one more video coming up with this unit, so if there's anything else you want to see running on the RG503, let me know in the comments below. But that's going to wrap it up for this one, and like always, thanks for watching.